Okay, just for the sake of being needlessly provocative.
Good.
Your definition of colonialism implying exploitation of peoples is not actually, I mean, colonialism simply means colonizing populated land. And there are academics out there, I'm not one of them, there are academics out there who argue that colonialism did more good than harm. It is possible. I don't agree with those arguments, but I don't think you would define it as necessarily including the harm.
The colonialists conquered people. British colonialists were those who exploited.
I think this is getting towards the over-dinner discussion. Can we move on to yours, please?
I am a very frequent seater of these seats, and I feel like giving a big kiss to Leonidas. Why? Because here we normally come and talk science, astrophysics, shipping, regulations, whatever. It's the first time we have a group of people talking lateral thinking, talking ethics, talking morality, talking philosophy, but philosophy and concepts with a need and an effort to see it applied in life. So for me, being here many times, this is the most inspirational time I'm here, and I would like to thank Leonidas for doing that, and you gentlemen for being here. Now, having said that, I want to continue what Leonidas said about emissions and shipping. How should I say it? We participate in the debate about protecting our climate. And the observation I would like to put forward to you, taking some of your words, the commitment gap, the central governance or non-central governance, the European morality or Brussels immorality, and mainly your words, duty and sacrifice. I think that in our debate about protecting climatic change, we are discussing so much very complex issues, and the complexity was highlighted here. But we are discussing it in a sectoral manner. We are discussing it at the shipping community, and Europe is discussing it as the European community. And when we talk about reducing emissions and spending some trillions of dollars for clean fuels or trading schemes or whatever, we rarely compare the investment and the cost benefit in one sector with the benefit in another sector if the money is placed there. And what we are lacking, and that's what I'd like to put to you as a plea and as a request, is we are lacking in integrated, holistic thinking which combines mature scientism together with social sensitivity, together with lateral thinking, and the sectors, the industry, the politicians really do need thinkers and philosophers and scientists in the working teams to find the practical solutions. I'm saying that because sometimes I feel that the scientific community is standing back as a community of intellectuals. I'm not suggesting activism, but I think that our community in our times need an engagement, and even if they're not asking you to participate, I think the leadership can come from you to say, hey, I've got something to contribute. And I think it's important that we all contribute in solution of complex issues like that. And what I've heard here, and the people I feel lucky I've met you, you are the people that we need as community, as industry, as an environment, as overheating or whatever, to find balances. So help us all. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
yesterday, and I wanted to reiterate because of the discussion about growing fruit. It does seem to me that there's a problem about information because, you know, people in the shipping industry know all about shipping. People like David know a great deal about, you know, the cost of growing things. But one of the difficulties I think that we as ordinary people face is that we really don't know we don't have the right information. So, you know, on our washing machines now, probably because of the EU, we have things that tell you how much it costs to run the blinking machine. And so if you're feeling very good, you pay for the more expensive machine that's most energy efficient. But we have very little idea, clearly, about the amount of energy that went into making the different ones. And that point, I think, came out yesterday. It was you with the interesting claim about the amount of different energy it make a European machine compared to an American. Oh, no, it was, what's his name? MIT. It was over there. The different ones. And we've just had this thing with the fruit, that perhaps now we know a bit more about miles that go into making things, but perhaps we ought to be focusing on the amount of energy that went into growing them. And so one of the difficulties I think that perhaps we ought to talk about, and that would be worth it for recommendations, is how do we put information in a form that's available to people, you know, like me, who don't really know very much science, who have to make decisions on what to buy, who have to make decisions on who to vote for. I mean, in that sense, we're lucky we have a privilege of voting, because we can't expect to hold politicians to account if we don't actually have the right information. If we're counting, and I think we really do have to count on ordinary citizens to hold their governments to the fire in order to bridge the commitment gap, then it's absolutely critical that ordinary citizens have access to good quality information. And there the problem, it seems to me, is that it's very, very difficult for most of us to know what the hell to think or what to do. And so again, my sense is a lot of these problems aren't ethical. They're problems of information and then also problems of will. But part of the problems of will come from this absolutely paralyzing sense. You just don't know. And I was wondering maybe we ought to focus on that maybe a bit more.
Information and misinformation is quite
yes.
Isn't it? George, Nicholas, sorry.
I want to say a word about innovation because I think we've not gotten subtle enough into this area. I come from Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I was trained as a technologist first. I taught chemistry at the Illinois Institute of Technology. I was the developer of the paint system for the Apollo mission spaceship, all before I went to law and economics, which is more of what the center of gravity of discussion here is. But I think you have to not fall into the trap that thinking that the problems of sustainability are largely a lack of technological innovation. There are some technologies we need, but you have to be much more conscious of the fact that 4 kinds of innovation are needed. Yes, you need to bring science and technology to the market. You also need organizational innovation, which means changes in the way that the private sector operates. You need institutional innovation, which is both laws and institutions. You need social innovation, so people learn to demand different things. Without all 4 kinds of those innovations being addressed to a sustainability problem, you are looking, I think, with unjustified optimism towards technology as a fix. Now, innovation technically is the first commercial application of an idea to the market. There are a lot of technologies which have never come to the market because other technologies were more useful at the time. A technology which is being re-examined it falls into the area of green chemistry. Now, green chemistry means alternative synthetic pathways to develop a certain product, because we designed technology to make polyethylene or whatever at a time when the factor prices made sense. This green chemistry is not inventing new chemical synthesis. It is discovering discarded ways of producing the chemical which never went from bench to plant. So this is a question of discovering. The other area, very fruitful, is to move to product services. You mentioned washing machines. Instead of owning a washing machine, if we had a system like reproduction machines like Xerox, where the stores rented us the washing machine. They would be made differently. They would use different amounts of energy. They would not be thrown away at the end of the day. So there are all kinds of reconfigurations of the commercial aspect which perform exactly the same services that we haven't looked at. And one I didn't mention yesterday, we have spent an enormous amount of human energy designing labor out of the production system and services. We need now to rediscover how to design labor intelligently into services and production. Not because we want people to pick up sacks of coal anymore, but if labor doesn't have a significant part of the input to the production and industrial process, it cannot claim a large wage. The idea of shortening the work week in France failed because people want the same wage for a shorter work week. In fact, the hourly wage goes up and the unemployment actually goes up, and exactly the unanticipated issues. So you really have to look at these issues. And the question I raised yesterday, which is, who's standing in your way in getting the alternative technology to market? People are standing in the way. It took an enormous number of years, and I'm sorry for the long-windedness of the comment, to replace cytogenic chemotherapeutic agents. That is, we gave chemotherapy that killed both the body and the tumor, and we hoped the body won. Most of the time, the body did not win. Only recently were technologies that had been invented 20, 30 years earlier, anti-angiogenesis chemotherapy, hormone enzyme inhibitions. It took 20, 30 years for the other guys to move over. It wasn't a question of scientific discovery. It was a question of reoriented the commercial services. That is where we really need to focus our attention. We should not be seduced about the fact that we need more energy. One final comment. We have energy-saving and material-saving technologies. There's something called Jevons paradox. If you have a more efficient car, you actually end up driving more miles and then consuming more petroleum. You have to not only decrease the material and energy intensity, you have to decrease the consumption. And that, people are going to want to sell more of the efficient unit, and you can feel guiltless about buying, but you aren't going to convert the industrial system. Now, most of you are not technologists, but I'm just saying to you, remember the 4 kinds of innovation, and you remember that you've got to move the people who are standing in your way out of the way. That's really where the emphasis needs to go politically and intellectually.
David, and then anybody else would like to join in that.
I mean, thank you. I think that was very useful because I think you rightly identified a gap in this panel in terms of talking about innovation, which was there in the title of the panel. I mean, the title of my talk was about competing claims, and I didn't particularly emphasize the competitive nature of the academic business because I'm trying to do interdisciplinarity, but most academics are not. And political scientists can and do say that in terms of famine prevention, politics is the only discipline that is required to solve the problem because for the moment, there is enough food in the world. So you do not need a technical solution. If famine was a technological problem only, it would have been solved by now, indeed has been solved by now. So to quote Sen, for example, famine is incredibly easy to prevent if you only want to. So that people like Sen, people like Jenny Edkins, Alex de Waal argue that all you need to do to prevent famines is get the politics right. And indeed, I'll answer one of the questions that I threw up. I argued in the international development policy that I recently authored for the Liberal Democrats. Yes, I think that the UK should fund democratic development and civil society development. Doesn't have to be democratic, but the voice, if you like, of the poor.